Listen carefully. There's something most men will never understand. Women don't chase confidence. They chase certainty. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that lives inside you. Deep, unmovable, real. If you want to know what that is, you need to stay with me. And if this resonates, subscribe. Not because I'm asking, because you'll want to return here. Now let's begin. Women will never forget a man who knows exactly who he is, not who he's trying to become, not who others tell him to be, who he actually is. This is different than you think. Most men confuse self-knowledge with arrogance. They think being clear about themselves means being loud about it, talking about it, defending it, proving it constantly to anyone who questions them. That's not it at all. Real self-knowledge is silent. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need an audience. It just exists inside you like a foundation beneath a house. When a woman meets a man like this, something shifts in her. She doesn't know why. She can't explain it to her friends, but she feels it. That's what she never forgets. Let me tell you what this looks like in real life. It's the man who knows his values and doesn't compromise them for comfort. Not because he's rigid, but because he's examined his life. He knows what matters. He knows what doesn't. And he moves accordingly. It's not the man who says no to everything. It's the man who says yes to what aligns with him and no to everything else, without apology, without explanation, without seeking approval. Women notice this immediately. They've spent their whole lives around men who shift their positions depending on who they're around, men who soften their opinions to gain approval, men who change their preferences to fit in, men who give away their power constantly because they never knew they had any to begin with. Then they meet a man who doesn't do this, and something in them wakes up. It's not about being difficult. It's the opposite. It's about being easy with yourself. So at peace with who you are, that you don't need to fight anyone. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. This is attractive beyond measure. But here's what most men get wrong. They think they need to build this certainty first. They think they need to figure everything out, get to some perfect version of themselves. Then women will arrive. Then women will notice. Then everything will change. That's backwards. The certainty doesn't come from figuring everything out. It comes from accepting that you're going to figure it out. That's who you are. You're the kind of man who commits to growth. You're the kind of man who takes responsibility for his life. You're the kind of man who doesn't make excuses. That's the foundation, not perfection. Character. Women never forget a man with character. And character isn't about never failing. It's about what you do after you fail. Do you blame the world? Do you make excuses? Do you hide? Or do you look at what happened? You take responsibility. You learn. You adjust. You move forward. The man who does this, the woman sees him differently. She sees someone solid, someone she can trust, someone who won't crumble when life gets difficult because she's already watched him respond to difficulty with honesty and action. This is the man she never forgets. Now let's go deeper into what this actually means. It means you have to stop performing. Most men spend their entire lives performing. They perform for their fathers. They perform for their peers. They perform for women. They perform for society. They create this character, this version of themselves, and they rehearse it constantly. The exhaustion is incredible, and women feel it immediately. They sense the performance. They sense the desperation beneath it. They sense the uncertainty masquerading as confidence. But the man who has stopped performing, who has decided to be genuinely himself, flaws included, limitations included, incompleteness included, that man is rare. And that man is memorable because authenticity is powerful. It's powerful, not because it's perfect. It's powerful because it's real. In a world full of performance, realness stands out like a light in darkness. The woman who encounters this doesn't forget it because she's probably been around thousands of men performing their entire lives. And then she meets one who just is. That's different. That's worth remembering. But here's the uncomfortable truth most men don't want to hear. You can't fake this. You can't study it. You can't download it. You can't take a course on it, because the moment you approach it as a technique, as something to learn and apply, you've lost it already. Authenticity can't be manufactured. It can only be discovered. It can only be lived. So the question becomes, what are you actually doing with your life right now? Not what do you want to do? What are you doing? What are you building? What are you working toward? What are you willing to sacrifice for? These answers matter deeply because a woman can tell if you're living a life or just passing time. She can sense if you have direction or if you're just reacting to whatever happens in front of you. The man with direction, the man with a purpose, the man who is building something meaningful. She notices him. She remembers him. And it's not about being impressive. It's about being intentional. A man can have a modest job and still be moving towards something bigger. He can have limited resources and still be building something meaningful. He can face setbacks and still maintain direction. This is what matters. This is what women never forget because most men don't have this. Most men are drifting. Most men are reacting. Most men are hoping something good happens to them rather than creating it themselves. So when a woman meets a man who is moving towards something, who is building something, who is creating his own life rather than waiting for life to happen to him, she takes notice and she doesn't forget it. Now let's talk about self-respect because this is foundational. Self-respect is not thinking you're better than others. It's not arrogance. It's not ego. It's something much simpler and much more powerful. It's treating yourself like you matter. Most men don't do this. They sacrifice their own well-being for others' approval. They compromise their values for temporary comfort. They abandon their goals for distraction. They neglect their health for convenience. They sabotage their own lives constantly because they don't believe they're worth the effort. This shows and women sense it immediately. When a man doesn't respect himself, it's visible in everything he does. It's in how he carries himself. It's in the choices he makes. It's in who he allows into his life. It's in what he tolerates from others. The man without self-respect is negotiable. He can be pushed around. He can be moved. He can be changed. He has no center. But the man with self-respect, he's immovable when it comes to what matters. He takes care of his body, not for vanity, because he respects himself. He maintains his standards not to impress others because he knows his own value. He protects his time, his energy, his attention because he understands these are finite resources and he won't waste them on things that don't matter. Women never forget this man because he represents something stable, something grounded, something she can depend on. Let me tell you what this looks like in action. He doesn't check his phone constantly when he's with her, not because he's trying to seem uninterested, because his attention is a valuable thing and he gives it deliberately. He doesn't mold himself into what she wants him to be. He brings himself. He brings his ideas, his opinions, his perspective. He's open to her, but he's not empty. He's not a blank slate waiting to be filled by her preferences. He doesn't pursue her endlessly. He's present. He's interested. He's intentional, but he's not desperate. He's not trying to convince her of something. He's just offering himself. Take it or leave it. This is incredibly rare and it's incredibly memorable because most women have spent their entire lives around men who are trying to be something for them. Men who are performing, men who are adjusting, men who are seeking approval or validation through being with them. Then they meet a man who is just being himself, who isn't trying to convince them of anything, who is secure in who he is, interested in what they have to offer, but not dependent on their approval. This man stands out. This man is unforgettable. Now, we need to talk about purpose because this is the thing that ties everything together. Purpose doesn't mean you need to change the world. It doesn't mean you need to be extraordinary. It means you're moving towards something meaningful, even if it's small, even if it's local, even if it's just for yourself and the people you love. A man with purpose has something to wake up for, something beyond just getting through the day, something that requires his effort, his attention, his growth. This man is different. He's not waiting for someone else to create meaning in his life. He's not hoping that a woman will give him purpose. He's not banking on external circumstances changing to make him feel alive. He's creating his own reasons to exist. And women can sense this. They can feel when a man is genuinely alive versus when he's just going through the motions. The alive man, the man with purpose, the man who is building something, creating something, working towards something. He draws people toward him, not through manipulation, not through tactics, but through the simple power of being engaged with his own life. Women never forget him because he represents possibility. He represents growth. He represents a life that's actually worth living. Let me be very clear about something. This has nothing to do with romantic relationships. This has nothing to do with impressing women or making them want you. This is about being the kind of man worth remembering, the kind of man worth knowing, the kind of man who makes an impact on people's lives simply by existing. If women notice this, they notice it. If they pursue you, they pursue you. But that's not the point. The point is becoming this man. Because when you're this man, when you know who you are, when you're living with purpose, when you're moving towards something meaningful, when you respect yourself enough to maintain your standards, everything changes. Not because women start chasing you, but because you start living a life worth being part of. And people, women included, want to be part of something real. They want to be near someone who is genuinely alive. So here's what this actually requires. First, you have to stop seeking approval. All of it from everyone, your parents, your peers, society, potential partners. You have to make peace with the fact that some people won't like you, some people won't understand you, some people will judge you. And that's okay. It's actually necessary because the moment you're trying to please everyone, you've lost yourself. Second, you have to decide what matters to you. Not what should matter, not what others say should matter, what actually matters to you, what makes you feel alive, what you're willing to work for, what you're willing to sacrifice for. This requires honesty, deep honesty. Third, you have to commit to becoming the person who can deliver on that, which means growing, which means learning, which means failing, which means getting back up. Fourth, you have to maintain your standards, not as a way to reject people, but as a way to honor yourself. The standards you set become the definition of your life. They determine who you spend time with, what you accept, what you refuse. Fifth, you have to understand that this is a process, not a destination. You don't get to some perfect version of yourself and then stop growing. You're always refining, always learning, always improving. And that's actually the point. The point is the becoming, not the arrival. The woman who witnesses this process, who sees a man committed to his own growth, who sees a man respecting himself enough to maintain his standards, who sees a man moving towards something meaningful, she never forgets this man because he represents something increasingly rare. He represents integrity. He represents intention. He represents a life that's actually being lived. Now let's talk about something deeper, the masculine grounding that underlies all of this. There's a way of being that is distinctly masculine. Not toxic, not aggressive, not about dominating others, but grounded, stable, clear. It's the quality of being rooted in something, of having a foundation that isn't dependent on external circumstances or other people's opinions. Most men have lost this. They've been taught to be soft, to be pleasing, to be constantly adjusting to what's around them, to be reactionary, to be dependent. But the man who has reclaimed his masculine grounding, who has decided to be solid, to be clear, to be intentional, to be rooted in who he is and what he believes. This man is magnetic, not in a manipulative way, in an actual felt way. People are drawn to him because he represents something stable, something real, something true. Women never forget this man because she can trust him. Not because he's perfect, but because he's real, because he's grounded, because he won't shift depending on what she wants or what the world throws at him. This is rare and valuable. Let me tell you what this looks like in practice. When you have this grounding, you don't need to argue or defend your position. You simply hold it. You present your perspective, your values, your boundaries, and you're okay with people disagreeing. You're okay with people not understanding because you're not asking for permission to be who you are. When you have this grounding, you can be vulnerable, not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to be honest. You can admit when you're wrong. You can ask for help. You can show uncertainty in specific areas while remaining certain about the things that matter. When you have this grounding, you can listen to a woman without immediately trying to fix her or change her. You can be present. You can honor her perspective while still maintaining your own. This is incredibly attractive. This is incredibly memorable because most men either dominate or submit. They either try to control or they disappear. They either force their will or they have no will. There's rarely a middle ground. Rarely a man who is both strong and humble, both certain and open, both grounded and flexible. This man stands out. This man is unforgettable. So here's what I want you to understand about all of this. It's not a strategy. It's not a tactic. It's not something you do to make women want you. It's something you become because you decide your life is worth living fully. The woman who never forgets you isn't forgetting you because of what you did. She's remembering you because of who you were. She's remembering you because you made an impact, because you were real, because you were genuinely yourself. And In a world full of people performing and pretending, that's revolutionary. So the question isn't, how do I make women remember me? The question is, who do I need to become to live a life worth remembering? And that question changes everything. Because when you focus on becoming that man, when you focus on your own growth, your own purpose, your own integrity, your own standards, everything else follows naturally. You don't have to try to be memorable. You just have to be real. And that's worth subscribing for. That's worth returning for, because this is the work that actually matters. Thank you for watching.